Welcome back to the Lifeworks Living Well podcast. I'm Mark Henick, and I'm not your host today. For this very special Pride Month episode, I'm going to be handing the mic over to a very special guest host. Mark Tewksbury first came to prominence as the star athlete who burst out of the water at the Barcelona Olympics. He's an Olympic champion with gold, silver, and bronze medals, 7 world records, and a cover appearance on Time magazine. But it's been Mark's remarkable post-Olympics life that has really truly defined him. He's since then become an important voice right here in Canada and around the world for justice and fairness and clean sport, for respect and inclusion for people with an intellectual disability, for diversity and inclusion and LGBT rights. Among his many honors, most recently, Mark was appointed Companion of the Order of Canada, the nation's highest civilian honor. I'm going to be coming back a little bit later to chat with Mark more about his conversation on today's episode. Until then, over to you, Mark Tewksbury. Thanks for doing this for me.
My pleasure. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be your guest host today.
So tell me a little bit about who you're going to be talking to today.
I'm talking to Quinn, of course, the first Olympic champion, out trans, non-binary athlete to make the top of the podium at the Olympic Games and part of the women's national soccer team here in Canada and a huge inspiration to many people around the world.
All right, I look forward to hearing it. Let's get over to it now and I'll check back in with you later.
Perfect. I can't wait to do it. Let's go. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be guest hosting today with my guest, Quinn. So Quinn is a professional soccer player who plays as a midfielder for the Canadian national team and the soccer league OL Reign in Tacoma, a suburb of Seattle. They were the first Canadian to play collegiate soccer at Duke University. And in 2021, at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Quinn became the first out transgender, non-binary athlete to compete at the Olympics, the first to medal at the Olympics, and the first to earn a gold medal at the Olympics. Please join me in welcoming Quinn.
Thank you so much for having me on, Mark.
I'm really excited to talk to you today, Quinn. I getting ready for this, I have to admit I'm a little, jealous because not only are you an amazing soccer player, you even swam, you played volleyball, you played basketball. Like you could do all these sports. When I was inducted to the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, I was like, do they know how I throw? So you bonify and qualify across the board. So talk to me about that. I mean, lots of people say you should try lots of sports. So I guess that's what your parents had to do.
Yeah, I mean, they threw me into every single sport you could think of. That being said, I think if I were to try out for the Olympic volleyball team, that would be a different story. But yeah, they just wanted me to try every single sport and be confident in what sport I wanted to do. And so I really thank them for that experience. And I think one of the reasons why I'm an elite athlete today is actually because I didn't have that burnout with trying to focus on one sport so early in my life. I actually ended up playing basketball up until college. And I think if I had the opportunity, I probably would have kept playing in college if there were more hours in the day. But that being said, I think it was like such a great outlet for me to have other sports, have a different community, have different friends. And so I didn't have that burnout. And then obviously I think like from a sports injury perspective as well, it's fantastic to get some diversity in the sports you play. But I mean, I've just loved jumping into everything, trying new things every single day. I know I rocked climbed the other day and it was a blast. So it's always fun for me trying new sports.
There's a great life lesson in there, actually, beyond sport. Like just keep being open and keep trying new things is fantastic. It's interesting, though, basketball could have also been a professional league. So what a tough decision. How did soccer kind of end up prevailing?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny one because when we think of playing sports in Canada, we obviously always jump to hockey in our winter Canadians. But for me, I have some older siblings and they started playing Little League soccer when I was around 3 years old. And I don't know what really clicked for me, but at 3 years old, I was begging my parents to join in on their Little League soccer, which was weird because I watched them play a variety of other sports. But for me, it was soccer that I needed to jump in on. And honestly, since I was 5 years old, when I got to start the Little League myself, I've just been hooked on it. And Canada was a place where it's actually hard to watch sports on to watch soccer on TV. It was hard to get the Premier League. It was hard to get overseas soccer. The Canadian national team wasn't on TV that much. And so for me, it was a spark from like those little league experiences, because it wasn't something I was digesting much in media or whatever else.
So let's jump to your soccer career and when you started to break through. So I was, as you know, chef, well, you might not know, I was chef de mission of the Olympic team in London. And the soccer team, the women's soccer team at that time was just emerging. John Herdman had just come on and confidence was being built. And I got to watch that march to the bronze medal, which I bet, I'm wondering if you watched that. You were at that time sort of in the under 17 leagues. You're at the World Cup for under 17. You won a silver medal in Guatemala at that year. So what was it like sort of breaking through as the team itself was breaking through?
Yeah, it was a really exciting experience. I was with the youth national teams at the time, and had been following the Canadian national team since, I don't even know, as young as I could be able to understand what the Canadian national team was. But yeah, they came off of a really difficult World Cup experience just before. And so it was really exciting to see them with a new sort of identity, a new coach, and just a new mindset going into it. It was hugely exciting for me to see that these people that I had admired for so long were just achieving the success that I thought that they deserved. And then as well, going through that system and, knocking on the door myself. And so it was really exciting to see. And I definitely, once I got to be on the senior team, was very, very starstruck at these athletes who had just achieved so much with their careers. It was truly amazing.
I even felt like that. I went in and spoke to the team after they qualified for the games in Vancouver many months before. I was kind of awestruck too. I was like, wow, I get to talk to this team. So then, and I love, it wasn't just a newfound mindset, it was a newfound confidence. Every time I talked to John Herdman at the Olympics, he would say to me, Mark, we're not leaving these games without a medal. And it was like, he absolutely predicted it. It came true. So your journey continues. 2016, you're now on the national team. You're at the Rio Olympics, and it's your first medal. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, 2016 was a little time ago now, but I still think it's hard to put into words what that experience means to me. I remember I was in grade 1, and my teacher was like, write in the journal what you want to be when you're older. And I drew myself like on the Olympic podium of what I wanted to be when I was older. And so to have that childhood dream that I had been focused on since grade 1 finally like come to fruition was just something that you can't put into words. And I don't think it's, unfortunately something that everyone gets to experience of achieving their childhood dreams. So that's a special moment for me. And in talking about the gold medal, I still hold that medal from Rio really, really close to my heart. Because for me, it was truly seeing all of the dedication, all of the hard work come to fruition, like I said.
All right, you brought me to the gold medal. I wasn't there yet, but let's go there. 2 Olympic medals, Olympic gold, Olympic bronze. So started with the bronze. I'm guessing, like, just from an outsider's point of view, that belief that started in 2012, that was kind of reinforced in 2016, by the time you were heading into 2020 with Bev as the head coach, there must have been this incredible focus and thinking that we can make this happen.
Yeah, I definitely think the team, as you were saying, found a new confidence after that 2012 period. They really came from rock bottom before that. And so the buy-in was huge. The buy-in was huge for that moment. And then I think with Rio, we had a real ambition of standing higher on the podium. And I think we had a real belief that we could do that. We've always had kind of a humble confidence to ourselves. I think that's within the Canadian DNA is we like to put our head down and we like to work. Like that is the true identity of our team. And although we've gotten a lot of incredibly technically talented players, like we still go back to our roots and the fact that we're just a hardworking team and we need to be innovative to find ways to compete with the best in the world. And so I think for us, we did have that true belief and we knew that some of these athletes were getting close to the end of their careers, and they had been people that I had looked up to for so many years. They had changed, the Canadian soccer landscape, the landscape for women's sports in general in Canada. And so for a lot of people on the team, it was it was giving them that gold medal, I would say. It really was making sure that they had achieved that gold medal before that they had ended their career. And so that also for us was such a huge motivation, knowing what people had given to the sport and given to this country, and wanting their success to happen as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, totally. It's so funny because the junior players that I saw in 2012 in 2021 are suddenly not so junior anymore. And then Christine was already senior in 2012, and she's still, right? Like, just what an amazing team and an amazing group of players. I have to say, Quinn, I know many, many people in our community that stayed up to watch that first match against Japan, where I think you played how long, 72 minutes in that game, and then became the first openly transgender, non-binary athlete to compete at the Olympic Games. So that was already kind of the first milestone, which is like so inspiring. I'm wondering, you just kept your head down and focused, right? And didn't get caught up in sort of history and this is the first, and obviously you had a job to do.
Yeah, I think it was a really difficult moment for me. And obviously as elite athletes, it's something that it's well thought out in terms of how much we kind of put our attention towards other things outside of, the game that's directly ahead of us. And so it's definitely strategic in the sense that we needed to hunker down, and we had to have that singular vision. But at the same time, it was hard for me because, in a sense, like, the reason I wake up every morning and the reason I go to practice and the motivation that I get is trying to change the landscape for sports for LGBTQ people. And so at the same time where I'm really wanting to dip my toes into that, and I'm wanting to use it as a time to advocate for the LGBTQ community, while also knowing that all of my focus really needs to go towards the next game. I think it was hard for me to juggle because it is such a strong core to my identity.
Totally can relate to that. The amazing thing is you could bring your whole self to the game, which was like, I love when you describe seeing Quinn on your accreditation, on the lineup, and what that meant for you. And it was kind of mixed emotions, right? On one hand, you felt so proud, and on the other hand, a little bit sad that maybe people before couldn't have the same experience.
Yeah, I think it is. It is a really difficult one, and it's something that I've seen throughout my journey as an athlete. I know when I was trying to figure out who I was and really figure out my transgender identity, there weren't many people that I could look up to. And that for me was heartbreaking because I felt like I was relatively new to the, professional soccer space and the professional athlete space. And knowing that there were so many people like me that just didn't have those comfortabilities. And even seeing my teammates' journeys and their own experiences with their sexuality, and understanding that, the difficult journey they had faced in that, it was really hard for me. But I think at the same time, obviously on the flip side, there is a lot of positives to it. I've been embraced by my team so well. The Canadian national team especially has just, taken it as a real opportunity to create change in all of their environments. And to this day, people on my national team are the ones advocating in their NWSL teams for creating more inclusive spaces. And so that's really exciting to see. And that's something that I know is going to continue moving forward throughout the rest of my career.
Amazing. Like, this incredible legacy already, Quinn, and you're just so early days in what you're going to be able to do with social change. And you know what? Winning a gold medal is always a great platform. So, even though it was tough the first match and you had to kind of stay focused and you wanted to promote, boy, the story kind of had a life of its own. And the wonderful thing about a team sport is that the story keeps going through the games. And so I think your story just kept building and building, and it was so exciting to watch. And now you've got this platform to speak from.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's great to have this platform. There's definitely a huge responsibility with it as well. I think I need to acknowledge consistently that I'm not the only voice in this conversation. And fortunately and unfortunately, I've been giving a big platform in that. But at the same time, it's uplifting other voices in that conversation, understanding that every single transgender person and every single transgender athlete has a different story, and they have a different experience, and they have different needs in their own environments. And so I think for me, it's been a huge privilege to be able to highlight these conversations, but as well, it's for me pivoting that conversation to a different person, into a different identity, into a different story with a different struggle.
Wow. I can so relate. when I came out in 1998. It's like I was kind of the very, very first. And I hoped, at that time I said, oh, in 5 years, the landscape's going to be completely different. And it was so frustrating. Like for 15 years, I was the go-to person, Quinn. It was just like, there's more athletes out there. But thankfully, Sochi was kind of a turning point, when they really, the Russian government targeted the LGBTQ plus community with the propaganda law. Finally, many, many athletes felt the importance to self-identify and come out. And I think it was a real tipping point. Trans athletes, I feel like where I was as a gay athlete in 1998, trans issues are, you're one of the first in 2021. So that's just, it's sometimes tough to be the first, but you carry that mantle and you do it brilliantly. Your approach is so inspiring.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you as well. I looked up to you when I was just a young athlete, watching the Olympics on TV. And so, I mean, likewise, like following your journey, I think your journey has a part in my journey, but it's going to have a part in another athlete's journey. And I think that's so exciting.
I'm most proud of that. I can tell you, I really am. Like it sucked to be the first and it was kind of hell, but it pays dividends later. Just know that. Okay. And it's already paying dividends for you now. I want to talk about your transition. So, it's just important for people to remember the 2S LGBTQ plus community. It's an umbrella term that represents a broad spectrum of identities that intersect sexuality and gender. And of course, you've been on this incredible gender transition journey. So I'm a cis male. That means that cis is a Latin term for this side of. So it means my biological sex and my gender and my identity all align. In your case, there wasn't always that alignment. And I'm curious when that process started for you, even internally.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back on my journey, I can identify moments where I really struggled with my gender at a young age. I know there's often this trope that children will speak out when they're, as young as the age of 2 or 3 years old with, such a strong understanding that they're transgender or what their identity is. And for me, it really wasn't like that. And I think in part because the transgender community wasn't a part of the conversation, I personally didn't know about the transgender community very well until I went to college. And so for me, that was a turning point in my own journey in understanding and having the words to put to what I was feeling was just like so powerful for me and so pivotal in my own experience. And I think I didn't have that education growing up and understanding that I could be transgender. And so for me, I can identify a lot of the feelings that I had growing up, but I didn't have any words to put to what that looked like, or even the understanding that could be a possibility.
I cannot believe how similar our stories are in some ways, because in 1994, I left Canada and moved to Australia, to Sydney, because I needed to have some space to discover who I was. And I studied gender politics. And so I found the language in sexual politics. And I found this language and the words for how I was feeling. And it was the most empowering thing. So I really can relate to that, right? And representation. I mean, why we're doing this today and why it's so important that you are visible and self-identifying is that the next generation will have people that they see thanks to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think representation is so important. And I was fortunate enough when I was in college to join an organization called Athlete Ally, which advocates for the LGBTQ community in sports. They do some incredible work. And I'm partnered with them today. But Duke was one of the first Athlete Ally chapters that had started, and the leader of our Athlete Ally group was actually a transgender man who was on our Duke rowing team. And so for me, that was the touchstone moment where I knew someone who identified as transgender and had a similar story to me and a similar trajectory to me. And that really made all of the pieces click. And I'm so thankful to have that and to have that representation when I was just a young athlete at Duke.
Talk to me about, like, who did you start to talk to this about with first? Was it family? When did you talk to your friends? When did you talk to your family? Share with me a little bit of that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think a coming out journey is something that happens, so consistently over time. We think it's going to be a one-time moment, and I'm sure you can attest to this, like how many times
It's
you've
still
come out to
happening.
random people.
It's still happening.
Exactly.
It's still like, oh my God. Some
You're
cab
like
driver
last week,
whistles.
yeah.
I know. Some cab driver whistles at a woman like, she's hot, hey? And I'm like, actually, I'm gay. She is hot, but I'm gay.
That's hilarious.
So
But
yeah,
yeah,
never
so I
really.
mean,
But yeah, who were some of the first people you had the conversations with?
yeah, I mean, definitely my family. I was going through such a hard time with really not understanding what my life would look like after college. Like FIFA and the Canadian national team and all of the other governing bodies like the NWSL, which is the professional league I play in now, they didn't have any guidelines for transgender inclusion. So I really had no idea where I stood on my journey and what the inclusiveness of my new teams would look like. And so for me, that was really difficult. So I really leaned on my family and one person in my life, my twin sister, her name is Jill. We're polar opposites, but she's, you know, my largest support system in person in my life. We're best friends. And, she supported me wholeheartedly through that experience and, never had like a negative question or hesitation to her support for me. And so that's been so beautiful. And then I think over time, as I grew more confident, it was coming out with different groups and my national team and my professional team. And, it's a continuous journey for me. And I'm sure it's one where I'm going to have to come out on other teams as well. But it has overall been really, really positive, that experience.
I got like a little teary and goosebumps. Right? I didn't know you were a twin, first of all, and to have that kind of such unconditional support and love from a person that's you're so connected to, that's just really inspiring. I can't imagine what you faced. I mean, even coming out in any way as part of a team is sometimes difficult because, as a team, you want to be one unit and unified, and nobody wants to stand out that much and, get that much attention on their own. And then the rules and the governing body. So let's start with your team. I mean, your Instagram post, so wonderful with your rainbow color 5 and your trans armband. So share that moment. Like, who presented that and what was that like?
Yeah. I actually really love telling this story when people ask about allyship and what allyship can look like in a work environment or on a team. I always say that it can look so different for different people. And I know when I came out to my team, there was definitely an understanding that there was an understanding that there was a lack of understanding. And I would say that like my coaching staff really took that leadership to heart and they organized educational trainings for my team. And this was going on through the peak of COVID and also, pivotal movements within the United States about race. And so my team decided that we needed to be more educated, to be more inclusive in our environment across, such a variety of topics. And so our coaching staff organized trainings for us that could help us make a more inclusive environment. And I really think that was so pivotal for my team in creating a more inclusive environment because they had that guidance, they had that education, and that was coming from the leadership on our team. And I think once that happened, it really created a space where people could talk openly about how they could improve and how we could change our environment. And so it really was like this growth mindset of knowing that in order to be the best team in the world, like we need to be the most inclusive. And in order to get the best performance out of everyone, they need to feel the most included on the team. And so I think that was so important to us. But going back to the allyship part, I think it just looks so different for everyone. And that armband, it was the captain armband, which was a transgender flag. And Christine Sinclair went to her professional clubs and without anyone asking her to, she asked her professional club to make 3 armbands, a transgender armband for Pride game for our national team, for her club team, and for the US national team in hopes that they would wear it in their game as well. And so I'm sure as many of you who followed Christine's journey know, like she is not super outspoken and she's, the quiet introverted type, kind of similar to myself. And that was her own way of speaking up for the LGBTQ community and the transgender community, knowing that someone in Canada was going to watch, Captain Canada, Christine Sinclair, walk out into our national team game with that transgender armband, like showing that she supported them wholeheartedly. And so I think like allyship can look so different. And for Christine, it was like through that armband. And for someone else on my team, it might be trying to change legislation in the United States and Canada, but they all have such important impacts.
Oh my God. I love Sinky already. Now I'm just like, that's leadership. That's inclusivity. It isn't that hard, folks, but it's like, you're creating that environment, everybody doing their little part, but that spoke volumes and speaks volumes to, I can see why you won. I really like, it's like, we're going to leave no stone unturned, including awareness of how we can be the most inclusive team on earth. It's just phenomenal. I'm guessing also, Quinn, like you're not alone anymore as an out athlete, identifying athlete, even on the Olympic team. There's Ghislaine Landry in rugby. There's Marcus Thornmeyer in swimming. There's Stephanie Labbe on your own soccer team. So it's really encouraging to see so many out athletes. Do you feel not as alone?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's been incredible to see the athletes that have been coming out and more comfortable in their own skin. And, that's thanks to those athletes. When I think of like Erin McLeod and Stephanie Labbe, when I had just joined the national team and I was also like questioning my sexuality, they were like so open about their relationships and so open about their sexuality. They just created that safe space. And so I think that has such a ripple effect into our sports community. And it makes a safe space for people to feel that they can come out. And we've seen it over the past few years. It's really exciting.
Oh, Erin McLeod, another one. You're killing me today. Erin sent me the nicest note when she came out. It was just beautiful. And I was that generation before her. So you're 2 generations down, Quinn. This is like crazy. It's too much.
I love it. We can make a web of how many people we've inspired to come out. You're going to be like the first one up here.
Oh my God. I mean, that's great. But, anyway. I recently attended a workshop myself about transgender people in the workplace, and was reinforced the importance of pronouns. The people that wonder, why are we using pronouns? It's obvious, like I'm Mark, I'm he, him. And of course that's obvious, but that's another step towards inclusivity. If we just leave it to trans people to identify as they, them, or whatever pronouns they choose, we continue the stigmatization, right? So it's a simple act where people can really show that they're supportive and inclusive.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. And I don't think you can ever assume what someone's pronouns are. We all present so differently to the world. And I think it's so powerful when we try and deconstruct our ideas of what gender really is. Like oftentimes we look at people and we assess X, Y, and Z attributes and then label them as, whatever. And I think it's so powerful in our own journeys of figuring out what feels good to us and deconstructing what those gender norms look like and being able to express ourselves in different ways. And so I think along that journey, when we stop assuming, people's pronouns and even assuming like what gender really is for them, I think that's really exciting. And I think it can be a really empowering experience for people. And so normalizing that in the workplace just creates a safe environment for everyone, and knowing that your pronouns aren't going to be just assumed and that they're going to be respected.
Yeah, and gender is something most people just take so for granted. They don't even think about it. So it doesn't even occur to them. And I feel like using pronouns it kind of levels the playing field. It makes it really sort of, fair across the board that we all get to say who we are. And Quinn, you know what? If the world had been how it was 40 years ago, I might have been a he, they, to be honest, in my pronouns, because I really felt strongly connected to that feminine side of myself. The kind of got a little bit shut down over the years, just because of the era that I grew up in, interestingly enough.
Yeah. That is super interesting.
Isn't that, you like that?
Yeah.
I know, because like I had so many feminine things. I love to I mean, I think it was confusion. Sexuality and gender were so, like, the intersectionality of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I expressed my attraction to guys. Somehow I liked playing with dolls and dressing up in my grandma's clothes. Like, so there, this interesting, lots of stuff going on. What happens when somebody makes a mistake? Like if they get your pronouns wrong or something, how do you handle something like that, Quinn?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I have a really good understanding of this is new for people. And I think that everyone's going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes on my transgender friends' pronouns before. My parents have made mistakes. And I think it's coming from a place for me and understanding that we're all working towards making a more inclusive environment. I mean, obviously, if someone's saying the wrong pronouns for different reasons, and that's another story. But I think,
and over
it's a
and over,
continuous...
like you're allowed one pass, right? You do like 5 times. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, at some point, I think there's a line that's crossed. But for the most part, I think it's just, it's so ingrained in us, and it's been ingrained in me as well. So it's a part of unlearning that takes time and that takes practice. That being said, I think for me, such a helpful point is asking allies to help do that work. I'm a really quiet person, and I really don't like confrontation in any form. And so it's hard for me to continuously be correcting people's pronouns. But it's really powerful when you have another ally that's in the room that will, just quietly correct someone's, mispronoun someone. And so I think that's really something that's really helpful for me.
Could not agree more. It's not up to the person suffering from mental health issue to advocate for a safe place in the workplace. They need an ally to speak up for them. Same with our community. It's so incredibly powerful. Thank you for reinforcing that point. It's Pride Month. Are you going to do anything special this month? What are your plans?
Yay.
Yay!
Oh, gosh. I think my team, excuse me, my team was supposed to be like, I don't know, some of the main people at Pride in Seattle. But unfortunately, I'm going to Toronto with our national team to start our World Cup qualifying journey. And so hopefully we can catch the tail end of some Pride celebrations in Toronto, which would be amazing because I'm not normally home for the month of June. And so that'll be a blast, just hanging out with the teammates, hopefully catching some stuff in Toronto.
Beautiful. I love that. You're so intriguing the tail end of Pride. Just a little tiny piece of Pride. Oh, Quinn, you're so, you may be introverted and quiet, soft-spoken, but you're so articulate and so thoughtful and so inspiring. So thank you for being you, for being an incredible role model. And I can't wait to keep watching your journey, both on the playing field and off.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for having me. This was such a great conversation, and I'm so glad we finally got to connect. I've obviously been watching your journey for so many years now, and so it's been really exciting. You're definitely a role model for me. So thank you.
Can we take one of the so's off that so many years?
Just like 1 or 2 years.
I owe you a huge hug in person, okay? I can't wait.
Sounds good.
In our changing world, there is an unchanging principle for success that inspires us. By improving a person's life, we'll improve how they perform at work. We are Lifeworks. We are the world's leading total well-being provider. We are innovators with tech-enabled solutions. Our mission is to improve people's lives by supporting the whole person, their mental, financial, physical, and social well-being. These people are the heart of successful organizations, leading these organizations to a more resilient future and making a real difference in the world and in our communities. Improving lives, improving business. We are Lifeworks.
Well, welcome back to the Lifeworks Living Well podcast. I'm still not your host, Mark Henick, but I am here with your guest host, Mark Tewksbury. Mark, what an incredible conversation that I just had the opportunity, the privilege to listen to between you and Quinn. What are your thoughts on it now that you had this chance to meet this person? This was the first time that you talked to Quinn, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, they're such an amazing human being. I mean, nice and warm and intelligent and articulate and humble and super insightful. So I was excited to do it. And I think they even exceeded my expectations of what a great person.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think, and you mentioned this in your conversation with Quinn as well, around your expectations when you came out in the 90s. Maybe I think you said maybe it'll be different in 5 years, and then 15, or I think it might be 20 years later.
There goes 14 or 15, you're right.
Yeah. So what do you think now, hearing about their experience and reflecting back, if you're even still able to put yourself back into those shoes back in the 90s of what you're experiencing, do you think we've come as far as you had hoped then?
Finally, I think we've reached kind of a tipping point, and we're getting there in certain areas. I mean, I think that Quinn could make the same prediction that I made in 1998, and it would be more accurate now. I think in 5 years from now, these issues will be more and more integrated into the sport world, and there'll be more out athletes, including trans athletes. But yeah, I thought of that too. I was like, it's such a different time and such a different place. And at the same time, trans issues remind me of a little bit where we were on the sort of gay liberation front almost 50 years ago.
That's so interesting about you mentioned how the rate of change or innovation kind of accelerates as we build critical mass, I guess. Were trans issues even really on the radar when you came out, or was it primarily focused on gay liberation in particular?
Yeah, at that time it was really the G in the LGBTQ plus. It was, I think sexuality led the charge, and of course, being part of gay culture, there were drag queens and transsexuals, so there was some gender issues of and visibility happening, but certainly not in sport, not in this domain, and I think that's what makes Quinn such a trailblazer. To their point, they didn't know what was going to happen once the transition took place. What do the rules say? What can the federations do? And very terrifying, as you know, Mark, like when you think that you could lose your livelihood from being honest about who you are, that's a pretty terrifying thing. And it takes a brave person to take the stand to say, okay, regardless of what happens, I have to do this for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you asked Quinn, and I'm going to ask you, do you have any big Pride Month plans since we're right in the thick of Pride Month?
No, this year I don't. You know what's fun? So in Calgary, where I live, Pride is actually on Labor Day weekend. So I'm not in a city like at the end of June, like San Francisco or Toronto or New York, that has really big celebrations. But we'll do something here for sure. I'm having a party on June 18th at my house, and I think you've just inspired me to throw a little Pride theme into it, Mark.
Well, there we go. I look forward to hearing all about it, how it goes. All right, Mark, I'm not going to keep you any longer, but thank you again so much for guest hosting the show for me today. And I hope that I trust, and I think I know that people will take a lot from it, hearing two icons like you and Quinn have such an important conversation. So thank you again.
My real pleasure. What an honor to be able to meet Quinn this way. And I think it's kind of cool that our very first meeting was captured in this form. So it had sort of a natural innocence to it, and naivety and curiosity and true inspiration from seeing them. So thank you for the opportunity, Mark.
We're almost out of time, but before we go, I'd like you to hear from one more person. Paula Allen is the global leader and senior vice president of research and total well-being for Lifeworks. Nice to see you again, Paula.
A pleasure, Mark.
Now, Lifeworks has a new workplace strategy index for mental health. Can you tell me a bit more about what that is?
Yeah, happy to. So we know that mental health is complex, and a number of things make a difference. And in terms of workplace mental health, the support and service and the quality of that service to employees is important. And we work very hard on that every day at Lifeworks. But also it's the strategy that the organization has. So the policies and practices, what they invest in. And we know that that can be pretty overwhelming. So the good news is that we work to make that simple as well. There's some established frameworks out there, ISO frameworks, our national standard. We've done a lot of research and we've pulled it all together in a very simple, easy to use tool. So organizations can enter, respond in terms of what they're doing, and they'll get a score. And that they'll also get information on where they might have some gaps, where their next best opportunity is, and it's for them to act on, and we can certainly help them act on it as well.
So who in the organization do you think would be best suited to seek out a tool like this?
Typically, we have the most senior human resources leader. So somebody with a span of control, that they understand everything that the organization is doing, but it's also possible that they might have someone else sitting beside them. But the tool itself, depending on the complexity of your organization, takes about 20 to 40 minutes to complete, and a report is generated automatically. So where you stand on basic compliance and foundational programming and preventative programming, as well as cultural integration and recommendations in terms of your next best steps.
Sounds like really useful information. Where can people learn more about it?
Well, we're offering it at no charge to clients and non-clients of Lifeworks. We really think it's important that we give information to the public because mental health in the workplace is such an important issue. And you can access it by going online at wsi-mh.com. So Workplace Strategy Index, WSI-MH mentalhealth.com, and then you can get going right away.
There we go. Easy. Paula Allen is the global leader and Senior Vice President of Research and Total Wellbeing for Lifeworks. Thanks, Paula. It's always nice talking to you.
A pleasure.
Well, that's it for us this week on Living Well. Many thanks to all of our guests today, and thanks to you, as always, for listening. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the show wherever you're getting it: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and just about everywhere else. You can go back and check out all the episodes from our 3 seasons so far on any of those platforms, as well as at livingwellpod.com. You can connect with me directly on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Mark Henick. I stream all the video from all of our episodes there, so let me know what you thought about the show in the comments section. If you found it helpful and inspiring, please share the episode with your friends and your social networks. Thanks again for sharing some of your day with us today. Until next time, I've been your host, Mark Henick. Take care and live.